we should probably walk through what the rating system is for the viewers. If we have that, we can put it up. We have a full screen of that. We have G, we have PG, PG-13, R, and then NC-17. No one 17 or younger admitted.
Right.
All right, so now we got that all out of the way.
You know that feeling, right? The excitement of settling in for a movie night. You've checked the rating, maybe it's a PG rating or an M rating, so you think you know what to expect. You feel ready for the content, and then bam, you're blindsided. A scene that makes you genuinely uncomfortable, a conversation that feels totally out of place, or a string of harsh language that completely shifts the tone of the film. Suddenly, your expectations are shattered. For me, and I know for many of you this happens all too often, I've caught myself asking, was that really necessary in a film with that rating? It raises a deeper issue. Are these broad, one-size-fits-all movie ratings truly serving us, the audience? I'm convinced they're not. In fact, they fall short in meaningful ways. They leave too much up to guesswork and far too much to interpretation.
The interesting thing is if you violate these, nothing happens. This is a voluntary code that, believe it or not, was actually the product of consumer demand many, many years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, I realize not everyone sees this as a problem. Some people might shrug it off, others might even call me a prude, a word that honestly I've never found offensive. If valuing modesty and clarity is considered prudish, then so be it. But I also know this, I'm not the only one who thinks this matters. Plenty of people care, people who are tired of being caught off guard and want something better. That's why I've leaned heavily on websites like kidsinmind.com. Unlike the vague PG or R ratings, they break films down into 3 specific categories: sex and nudity, violence and gore, and language, each scored from 0 to 10. They don't call it X.Y.Z. That's a framework I've created to make it easier to explain, but it's the same core idea. Their system is clear, consistent, and supported by detailed descriptions of what actually appears in the film.
If it's PG, then there might be something unsuitable for young or sensitive viewers, in which case Buffy will just have to stay home, along with Grandma, who didn't want to go to the movies anyway. Now, if the movie's rated PG-13, then...
Jack, we're ready for the next scene. You're gonna have to wait.
No, please, I beg you, let me finish. This is very, very important.
Later.
But...
Later!
They even include extra sections on substance use, trigger warnings, and conversation points, making it an excellent resource for parents, veterans, and people of faith like myself who care deeply about what we bring into our homes and minds. Another great tool is IMDb's parental guide. It doesn't use numbers, but it lets users flag scenes and describe the kind of content in each category. It's not perfect, but between the two, you get a much clearer picture of what's actually in a film before you watch it.
Now, if the movie's rated PG-13, it might have some material in there that Mommy and Daddy might not like some of the young kids to see, so Jody might just have to stay home. Bye-bye, Jody.
I strongly encourage you, before watching a new film, check kidsinmind.com and consider IMDb's parental guide as well. They're tremendously helpful. In fact, the idea for this video came from those exact tools. They inspired me to think, what if this type of content labeling were mainstream? What if, instead of hiding behind vague labels, the film industry gave us detailed, standardized ratings across the board? Let's really examine this. Think about the sheer range within a single rating like PG. On one hand, you have a timeless, family-friendly film like The Lion King. Genuinely uplifting and appropriate for all ages. But then there are other PG films that, while avoiding explicit profanity or graphic violence, still include unsettling themes, crude humor, or intense moments that feel out of step with the tone the rating implies. That's the problem. The ratings act as a blunt tool. They offer a broad category but little insight. They don't give you the level of detail needed to make a truly informed decision. It's like walking into a grocery store and finding a product labeled only as food. You won't buy it, would you? Immediately you'd ask, what are the ingredients? Does it have allergens? Is it organic? What's the nutritional value? We expect transparency in what we eat. We demand to know what we're putting into our bodies. Yet when it comes to what we feed our minds and souls, the stories we watch, the messages we absorb, we're left with vague, inconsistent labels that barely scratch the surface.
In 1915, our Supreme Court decided that movies were potentially evil. Believe that?
Really?
And they decided that free speech did not extend to movies. So what happened was the Motion Picture Administration, they decided we've got to do something because.
So here's the idea. What if we applied the same standard of detail to films as we do to food? A detailed, standardized breakdown that works like a nutrition label, giving us the full content picture before we commit. Enter the X.Y.Z movie ingredient list. Picture this, a rating system that doesn't rely on a single letter, but a set of 3 clear numbers like 3, 2, 9, displayed alongside a movie's synopsis or poster. Instantly you'd know what kind of content to expect. This is the X.Y.Z system, where X stands for sex and nudity, Y stands for violence, and Z stands for language, each rated on a scale from 0 to 10. Let's break down that example. 3, 2, 9. A 3 for sex and nudity would tell us that the film has some suggestive elements or brief non-explicit nudity. Mature themes may be present, but not dominant. A 2 for violence would tell us that it's very minimal, possibly implied or stylized without graphic imagery or gore. Think mild cartoon scuffles or brief off-screen incidents. And a 9 for language would tell us to expect frequent, strong profanity. Not just a few harsh words, but language that's prominent or sustained throughout. Compare that to a typical PG film, which might rate 1, 1, 3. Very little across the board. Or an M-rated action flick, maybe something like 4, 6, 8. Suddenly, instead of a vague category, you have a concrete breakdown. So let me ask you, what's more useful? A single letter rating that forces you to guess, or a numerical system that spells out exactly what you're walking into? For someone like me who appreciates mature, thoughtful storytelling, but is turned off by excessive or gratuitous content, the X.Y.Z system would be transformative. It gives you, the viewer, true agency. Because for many of us, having that level of detail matters, whether for personal values, religious beliefs, or simply individual preference. We want to engage with films that align with what we believe and what we're comfortable with. As a Catholic, I thrive to engage with media that uplifts rather than degrades, content that informs, enriches, and respects the dignity of the human person. I know many others feel the same way, and they deserve a better tool for navigating film content. Parents too would benefit immensely. A system like this would allow them to quickly assess whether a film is appropriate for their children without having to guess or risk unnecessary exposure to disturbing material. This isn't about censorship, it's about informed choice. It's about understanding exactly what we're bringing into our homes and our minds. But if the benefits are so obvious, why hasn't this kind of system been adopted? There are real challenges.
We have all these movie choices out there. Some are aimed at children, some are aimed at adults. We don't know what's appropriate to go to. And so this new system was formed, and it's evolved a little bit over the years. But the consumer demand was out there basically saying, tell us what we're getting ourselves into before we go to the theaters. So the MPAA devised this system, and it's completely voluntary. Theater owners just abide by it. I think just because consumers want some guidance as to what they're getting into.
Parents want some guidance.
Right.
And it's so pervasive that we just, we just trust what they say, and we just go along with that then.
Studios seek the widest possible audience. They pour massive budgets into these films and want them to appeal broadly. A detailed rating, even if accurate, might cause viewers to opt out prematurely. A 7 for language might turn away families. even if the rest of the film is meaningful and well made. The subjectivity problem. Assigning a 0 to 10 rating to sex, violence, or language isn't easy. Where does a 3 end and a 4 begin? Who defines what counts as moderate versus frequent? It opens the door to inconsistency and debate. The artistic pushback. Some filmmakers argue that reducing a work of art to numbers cheapens its intent. They fear that audiences will fixate on the ratings instead of the story. But the truth is, filmmakers have always worked within content boundaries. Great art doesn't require gratuitous content, and providing context doesn't limit creativity. It empowers the audience. Legal and regulatory inertia. Organizations like the MPAA in the US operate under long-standing frameworks. Introducing a whole new system would mean rewriting agreements, passing legislation, and building consensus in an industry that is notoriously slow to change. Marketing priorities. Trailers aren't designed to warn, they're built to sell. They showcase what's most exciting, not what's most concerning. A detailed rating might undermine that marketing strategy. But despite these hurdles, the core truth remains. We are consumers of media. And just like food, media shapes us, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. If we take care of what we put into our bodies, why not be just as thoughtful about what we allow into our minds? Imagine if we treated films with the same discernment. Think of something like 12 Angry Men. Powerful, tightly written, and driven by moral tension, not graphic content, or Arrival, with a rating of 135, which explores complex ideas with intelligence and restraint. These films prove that powerful storytelling doesn't rely on shock or vulgarity. If you're someone who values grounded, thought-provoking cinema, stories that challenge you without compromising your standards, the X.Y.Z system isn't just helpful, it's necessary. It gives us the clarity and respect we deserve. So what do you think? Do you believe the current rating system is enough? Would you find an X.Y.Z breakdown useful? What categories would you include? And how would you rate some of your favorite films under this model? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep seeking out stories that nourish your soul and leave you better than they found you. God bless.